We're going to look at whether CBT works for the treatment of irritable bowel syndrome. So before we start, let's think about the options that you have as someone suffering with IBS. So the first and most obvious option is to go to the doctor. Because IBS is a syndrome, that means there's no medical explanation for it, but doctors do sometimes prescribe certain medication which can help. It does create dependency in some cases, it has severe side effects, and it's certainly not a cure, which they don't claim it to be. Some doctors will prescribe those things, some will just send you on your way. The other option you've got within the kind of physical space is diet and supplements. So you can, restrict your diet in some way. You can do a FODMAP diet, a GAPS diet. Many of you will have already tried this. And you can try taking different supplements to influence your physiology. So both of those are physiological methods for dealing with IBS. And then you've got psychological methods. And one of the most popular is CBT. Now, CBT became really popular because it's quite short, doesn't go on for years like other types of therapy, and it's very results focused. So why do psychological interventions work at all for the treatment of irritable bowel syndrome, which is a very physical, very real disorder? Many people, get stuck in the medical or the supplements diet and they say, this isn't going to work for me at all, psychological just won't work. But it does. So why is that? And it's to do with the enteric nervous system, which connects the gut and the brain together. It's deeply embedded in the gut, and the gut is also responsible for much of our mood. So mood is like a feedback system between our gut and our brain. And as our microbiome changes, our mood will change. And as our thoughts change, our microbiome will change. And by microbiome, I mean all the bacteria, all the viruses, all the yeasts, all the protozoa that live in our gut. And we actually have more microbial DNA in our bodies than we do human DNA. So, it's a staggering array of different microorganisms down there in our gut, and they're very influential. This is pretty common knowledge these days. A few years ago, people didn't realize that. But what a lot of people don't know when they're treating gut disorders is that just, for example, killing all parasites, killing all yeasts or bacteria or anything in your gut is not necessarily a good idea because it's a complex ecosystem. And as I say, a feedback mechanism with your brain. So let's focus in on CBT. Why does CBT help? So the key sort of system behind CBT or view of the world is that your thoughts influence your emotions and your emotions influence your behaviors. And at any point, you can cut in and you can change your outcomes. As you get looping thoughts, which create stress and anxiety, these inevitably have an effect on your enteric nervous system, impacting your microbiome, which feeds back up to your brain and can quickly become a vicious cycle of anxiety and physical symptoms. And this is what causes much of IBS and many other gut symptoms. CBT goes into a lot of the way you think, and the therapist generally helps you to understand where you may be thinking in very black and white terms, being very perfectionist, and so on and so forth. But today I wanted to look at an approach which really unites this physical space with the mind space. It has an effect on both your body and your mind in a very profound way. And that approach is hypnotherapy. So if we go back to CBT, we think about the core principle, which is that your thoughts influence your emotions and influence your behaviors, and you have to cut into that loop somewhere. Well, hypnotherapy sees a step before your thought. After all, we don't actually decide what we're going to think next. You don't think, the next thought I'm going to have will be X or Y. It just kind of pops into your head. And the reason it does that is because all your thoughts essentially come from your unconscious mind. And then they arise, we decide what to do with them. We can ignore them, we can go along with them. We can go along and create an emotion and so forth and create a behavior. We have a choice once it comes up, but it's quite hard because once it pops into your awareness, it feels like you and you identify it as yourself. Hypnotherapy looks at very much negotiating with this unconscious part of you and unpicking those unconscious loops which keep our behavior just going around and around in circles. And anxiety very much is a circle, isn't it? And it's not like you can just decide, I'm being anxious, I don't want to be anxious now. It doesn't often work like that. You can try and change your thoughts, change your behaviors, change your emotions, but it doesn't always work. So hypnotherapy goes right to the root cause. Like, what are the networks of unconscious beliefs which are impacting on your conscious thoughts. And that way, you really cut the loop right at its source. And it's incredible for anxiety, and it's incredible for the treatment of irritable bowel syndrome. Now, that's one of the mechanisms, which is a kind of emotional, quite a logical mechanism behind hypnotherapy. But there's another thing at play when you go into a session of hypnotherapy, and that's seeing what you want your body to do, even if you don't have direct control of it. Obviously, we don't have control of our autonomic nervous systems, of our breathing is unconscious, our heart rate is unconscious, our digestion is unconscious. But we already know that our thoughts have the power to impact our digestion, for example. We get a locked up stomach when we're anxious. So hypnotherapy takes you through guided visualization, which has a very real, measurable physical impact in your body on your digestion, for example. And this is a lot of the way that, people like Joe Dispenza that you see nowadays, meditation gurus who talk a lot about seeing what you want before you get it. And the mechanism behind this is that, as you see things, you're almost making a request with your conscious mind every single day to your body. And because they're so deeply connected, your body will start to make changes. And, that will show up in terms of improved digestion, improved mood, can even change the composition of your microbiome. So I'm absolutely not saying that you can just completely disregard diet and not think about physical interventions at all. It is very much a feedback loop, and you've got your physical on one side and you've got your mind body stuff on the other side. They're deeply connected. And if you eat well and you move, you're going to be in a better mood, which is going to change your thoughts. Simultaneously, if you deal with your unconscious mind using approaches like hypnotherapy, that is going to very much affect your physical outcomes. And digestion is one of those physical outcomes which really shows up for just so many people, which is why something like 20% of the population have IBS symptoms. We're chronically stressed people, we're chronically anxious, we're always worried about work, about holding everything together, about being there for our families, never making a mistake. And it all just feels too much sometimes, And where does that show? It comes out in our bodies. It comes out in terms of physical symptoms of our bodies just saying, hey, this is not okay. I don't feel okay. I can't carry on with this level of anxiety, with this level of stress. So I really recommend you to dive into hypnotherapy, to give it a try. It's phenomenal for the treatment of IBS. As I said, it's got something like an 80 to 85% efficacy rate, depending on the study. And you really can see results very fast. Once you unpick those unconscious loops, which keep you going around and around in those anxious patterns, things can start to change way, way quicker than you ever thought possible. So check the link below in the description and go to philipweston.com.